Welcome everybody to the Monthly Movie Dispatch, the show where we get together once a month and we talk about our favorite movie that came out that month. We recommend it to each other and we talk about what's so great about it and we get excited about movies. I'm here with some of my best movie watching friends. These guys I've known since high school, and that's what separates us from every other movie related show. We've been friends since high school and we'd be talking about movies even if no one was listening. We just love movies and we're excited about it. This time of year gets really exciting because this is when Oscar season really starts spinning up. So all the movies that we're going to be talking about are kind of going to be high contenders for our end of the year top 10 lists. So I think we should just dive right into it. First, I'm going to introduce who we're watching the show with. We got Brandon Bowlby in New York City.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. Brandon, real quick, we're going to do some team building exercises for just to get the show off on the right track. And because this is our October episode, I have themed them all horror movie related. So Brandon, which do you prefer? Which one's better? Okay? The Shining or The Exorcist?
I'd say The Shining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And we got his brother, Sean Bowlby, in Seattle, Washington. What's up, Sean?
Hi, how's it going?
Great. What's better? The Blair Witch Project or Alien?
Alien, yeah.
Alien. Okay. And we got Derek Deal in Everett, Washington. What's up, Derek?
Hey.
Okay, Derek. This is a tough one. The Ring or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
All right. Okay. Awesome.
Which Texas Chainsaw?
That was like the most confident we've all been on those intro questions.
The remake.
Yeah, those were softballs, Nick.
Those were softballs?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to...
It was good. Actually...
Do you want a harder one? The Fly or Invasions of the Body Snatchers?
Oh. I haven't seen the original, or I haven't seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers, so...
Oh, man. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, you took it up a notch, Nick.
Maybe to see it, yeah.
Well, I could have gone deep cut, but then I was like, I don't know which horror movies you guys have seen, so I wanted to make sure there are ones you guys saw. I felt like Sean's was the least fair. Like, how can you compare Alien, like a cerebral, intense, methodical movie, to the Blair Witch Project, which was just
people wandering around in the woods for an hour and a half.
So I thought that one was not fair. But besides that, I don't know. I thought we were doing pretty good. Anyway, so I'm pretty excited about October. I love this time of year. I love talking to you guys about movies. So how's everything going, Brandon? I promised you that I'd jump to you first because you wanted to talk about something right off the top. That's not necessarily movie related, but I know you're excited about it.
Yeah, only partially movie related. I've been watching Shane Dawson's 6-part docuseries on YouTube. If you guys haven't heard of him, he is easily and by far my favorite YouTuber. He's been around the game for a long time, but this last year and a half, he's really pushed himself to make some artful YouTube projects. And the amount of time he spent on this latest one, he's been filming it for like 8 months. And yeah, it was 6 parts, about 6 hours of documentary footage. It was basically just about him and this really eccentric guy, Jeffree Star, and who has his own makeup line, and he's basically coaching Shane through creating his own makeup line from scratch to like launch. It's fascinating seeing a whole like production of that. And Shane is just like on top of his amazing like video skills and editing skills, he's also like one of the funniest guys just to watch and listen to. So while you're watching this documentary, you're also cracking up. Hope you guys get a chance to check it out.
So that's Shane Dawson.
Interesting.
Yep, totally self-produced. He's doing it all on his own, just him and his cameraman, Andrew. It's pretty amazing to see and inspiring.
I've watched most of his series. I haven't started this one yet, but It's definitely the stuff he does is like close to, I think, what my ideal purpose of YouTube is, which is like, yeah, people just at home making incredible content, like stuff that some people would pay to probably watch. Like, it's just that high quality stuff. And I don't know if anyone else is really doing that. Not like to his level.
Not to his
like
length, I think, is the big thing.
His length, but also like his user, or not user base, but like his I don't know, the amount of people that watch it. Like his docu-series are like big events on YouTube. So,
well, cool. Yeah, I've only seen a few of his videos that you've shared, but he is super funny and a great editor. So yeah, we'll have to check that out. Sean, Derek, do you guys have anything you want to report before we dive into this episode?
No, I guess some
let's
horror
jump
movies
in.
to talk about once we jump into that section.
Yeah, I mean we're in the middle of football season. Seahawks are 7-2. That's cool.
Yeah.
SmackDown is on Fridays now on Channel 13.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Anyway, so the rest of this episode, we have 3 movies that we're going to talk about in depth. Sean, Derek, and Brandon have each picked a movie, and we're going to be talking about The Lighthouse. I'm sorry. We're going to be talking about The Lighthouse. Brandon, what was the name of the movie that you chose again?
Light of My Life.
Indie than The Light of My Life, a movie that I'm really excited to hear Brandon talk about and to see eventually. But I'm sorry, but that name is having a hard time sticking in my head. I'm gonna have to
agreed.
tattoo it on my hand or something. But and we're gonna talk about the Joker. So that's the other big one. So the Joker, the moneymaker, the Joker. But first, I wanted to tell you guys about how I did horror movie month this last month. You guys know that I do that. I try to do it every year. This is my 6th year in a row doing it. And in the past, me and Derek have kind of done it together, and we've like podcasted weekly, like our updates and stuff. And it's always something I like truly enjoy. Like I feel like both me and Derek, when we started doing it, we were kind of scaredy cats, and horror wasn't one of my genres. But after doing it every year, I've like grown such a fondness for horror movies, and I love how they're allowed to be so creative, and even the bad ones usually have like really like nuggets of like really interesting ideas. And I don't get scared as much as I used to, but like after watching like 31, they get inside your head, and you know, even if you're not scared in the moment, like I don't know, just kind of like creates a eerie, spooky, tenseful tone of the month. And I don't know, I love it. I love this. I love doing horror movie month. I started early this year, so I kind of called it horror movie month because I started like a week early because I wanted to make sure to watch all the movies. It was kind of less about the challenge and more about seeing 31 movies. So real quick, this is going to take long, but Brandon suggested I do this, just list off all 31 that I watched, just because
do it.
I don't know, it's kind of fun hearing them all in a row. So I got them right here, so I'm gonna read them off my iPad. Okay, so I'm not gonna say the numbers. I think I'm just gonna list them. So The House of the Devil, 1957 is The Curse of Frankenstein, Dead of Night, the 1959 The Mummy, Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse, Cabin Fever 2, Spring Fever, The Witches from 1990, Rob Zombie's 31, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, the 1932 classic Freaks, Happy Death Day, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, John Woo Park's The Host, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Jeremy Saulnier's Murder Party, In the Tall Grass, Sudden Fear, One Cut of the Dead, Tigers Are Not Afraid, Cat People, It Conquered the World, Cannibal Holocaust, The Revenge of Frankenstein, I Walked with a Zombie, The Lighthouse, Three from Hell, Don't Look Now, Dracula, Prince of Darkness, The Last House on the Left, Tusk, and House. So those were my 31. And it was super fun. Some of the big things I went through, you may have heard. I watched a bunch of Hammer movies. Hammer is a production company from like that put out a lot of monster movies in the 1950s and 60s. And that was when Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing were like in every single movie, and those are really awesome. Like The Revenge of Frankenstein. That was the Curse of Frankenstein was the first of their Frankenstein movies, and it focused less on the monster and more of Peter Cushing as Dr. Frankenstein. And the sequel started right where the first one ended, and it just, I don't know, gets weird. Like, it doesn't focus on the monster, so it just kind of gets more into the psychology of Dr. Frankenstein, and those were awesome. And yeah, I watched a bunch of cool movies from some of my favorite directors. I don't know. Do you guys have any questions or anything about any of these movies that I listed?
Mm-hmm. One I'm really interested in. So in the spirit of seeing Parasite, which is a movie we'll talk about next month, how good was The Host? Like, how did Bong Joon-ho's like style carry over into the horror genre from the past?
So from what I've experienced in Bong Joon-ho films, which The Host definitely carried on, was he's really, really talented at balancing different tones all at the same time. Like, there's a lot of different layers to the movie. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard much about The Host, but it's a pure monster movie. Basically, like, the United States like dumped a bunch of chemicals into a river in Korea, and a giant monster was formed, and it like runs around and terrorizes the city. But there's a lot of different levels to the movie. Like, there are some scenes that are like truly terrifying with like this weird scary monster running around, but then like it also gets like really funny in certain parts, and then there's scenes that are like really, really sad. Like the daughter in the family goes missing, and all the family's like blaming each other, and it's like a really sad scene. But then they kind of start like blumbling on top of each other and kind of like fighting, but in a really like sad, goofy way, and it kind of turns into like a really absurdist sort of funny moment. And I don't know, I feel like Bong Joon-ho does that a lot with his movies, where
that's his signature.
He has all these totally, and so that was one thing I really enjoyed about The Host. That kind of thing doesn't always work for me, but it seems like when Bong Joon-ho does it, it does work. So, like, I don't think I've seen a movie of his that I haven't liked. So The Host was great in that sense.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. How was the intensity of your horror movie month with a pregnant wife in the house? Were you able to get in some pretty gory, bloody stuff, or did you stick? You feel like you stuck pretty tame?
Yeah, well, Shannon's been a real trooper with horror movie month this month, and we kind of made an agreement early on that like I wouldn't watch too many of the truly horrifying ones while she was around. She actually really likes the monster movie ones, and so that was kind of like I like I was saying before, like I really like these Hammer movies. Like there's so many of them, but they're all like really fun, and so she was really open to watching those with me. That was why I watched so many of them, and like they're those ones are interesting because they're like certainly creepy, especially Frankenstein. It's like Dr. Frankenstein's a freaking weirdo, and they really dig into like how weird he is, but also the movie is just kind of like, it's not like truly terrifying, and so the other kind of weird thing that was happening this month was that my baby wasn't really sleeping that much. It seemed like she was waking up for like 2 hours a night. Like she would just wake up in the middle of the night and then just be awake. Like she wouldn't even like be crying or that upset. She would just be awake making noise, and I mean she'd cry if like we ignored her for too long, and then she'd like get really upset and she would just want us to like rock her back to sleep. And so I would often find myself just like sitting in the chair with her, like rocking her for like hours. And I kind of developed a routine of like watching horror movies on my iPad. So that was kind of when I watched a bunch of like really horrifying movies. Like I'd watch like a Rob Zombie movie where like 31, the Rob Zombie movie. I remember distinctly like watching like this movie that's like super violent where these people are just trying to survive while these weird carnival people are like chasing them around with chainsaws. I just remember watching that, like holding my baby, my sweet little innocent baby, and you know she's not looking at the screen. She's totally fine. She's oblivious to what's happening around her, and I'm just like, you know, kind of looking off to the side. Yeah, I've got my headphones on. I'm just kind of holding her and just watching TV. You know. So I don't know. There were a few like that.
Nice.
You know, we traveled too. Like I went up to Alaska, so there were times while we were traveling where I'd like watch a movie while, you know, nothing was happening. And yeah, that's when I watched Murder Party. And I don't know if you guys know much about Murder Party, but like Jeremy Saulnier's like,
I really want to see it,
dude. It's fun. Like I
That's his
really
first
enjoyed that one.
movie,
That
right?
was. Yeah, it's his first movie, and it's clearly not as, like, refined and, like, perfect as Blue Ruin and Green Room. Like, Green Room is so methodical and paced out perfectly, building the intensity. It's such an intense movie, and Murder Party is not that. Murder Party is kind of sloppy, it's kind of all over the place. It's doing the thing where it juggles genres, because it's very funny, but it's also very gory, but, yeah, that was one that I watched like while we were traveling, and I was just like, this is fun. Like I really enjoyed Murder Party, and you could tell there's a nugget of talent there. Like you can tell like he's going to go on and do something else, but there's like, I don't know, there's like this really funny scene in the beginning of the movie where he's like this weird loser guy, and he comes home on Halloween night, and he finds this invitation on his walk home to the murder party, and he goes in. He had rented a movie, and he like goes into his house. He fills up a big bowl of candy corn, and he goes to his chair. He puts the movie in the VCR, and then he sees his cat is sitting in the chair, and he's like, "Excuse me," and the cat just looks at him, and he looks at the cat, and the cat looks at him. He looks at the cat. The cat looks at him. He looks at the cat. And then he's like, "Fine," and then he like goes and puts on a costume and goes to the murder party, and that pretty much sets the tone for the movie. So, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, that movie was pretty violent too. But again, I didn't really watch that one when she was around too much. I don't know. I just kind of found time to watch the movie, the really horrifying ones. So.
Nice.
So how did you get through Cannibal Holocaust?
Oh. Great question, Derek. How did I get through Cannibal Holocaust? Well, that was kind of a weird situation because that was one of those nights where, yeah, Lane wasn't really sleeping, and I had subscribed to Shudder for the month, and I got Lane back to sleep, and then I couldn't get back to sleep. So I wasn't really watching that when I was with her. I couldn't get back to sleep. So like basically from like 3 to 4 a.m. I was like putting her back to sleep, and then I couldn't get back to sleep myself. I was just like wired, and at 4 a.m. it's kind of one of those times where, when you have to get up at 6, like it might just be easier to stay up. So I went in the living room and turned on Cannibal Holocaust on the TV, and
damn.
I just watched it. And yeah, I mean it's one of those movies where I finished it and I thought, yeah, there's something broken inside of me.
Yeah.
Just that I was able to sit through it. I just felt kind of broken, like I don't really think there's something wrong with me, but like
Right.
I wouldn't recommend it for most people. I do think the movie's very interesting, and like there is something to so I mean, to me, Cannibal Holocaust is like the most explicitly like exploitative movie, and there's like a subgenre of exploitation movies. And I also watched The Last House on the Left, which I also think is an exploitative movie, but the thing about The Last House on the Left is there's a lot of violence against like teenage women, and I don't know if the movie really has a purpose for the violence. I mean, it's also kind of a sloppy movie, but like I also don't think there's a greater purpose for showing all the violence. And
Right.
Cannibal Holocaust is different because it's trying to be super realistic. So I don't know if you guys I don't know what you guys know about Cannibal Holocaust, but it's about this guy who there's a film crew that was going to go film a documentary in the middle of the jungle, and they disappeared. And so he goes into the jungle to try to find them, and he gets there and he finds that they've been killed. Like they're not there anymore. But their cameras and their equipment, their footage are still there, and the tribe like has it, and he recovers it, and then he comes back, and these news. These TV stations, they want to edit the footage and put it out as like a documentary. And he's like, you can't do that. Like, you can't show this footage to anybody. You need to destroy this footage. And then like the second half of the movie is basically just like watching the footage. So it's all like semi-documentary style. Like, it's very much like a documentary. And the director of the movie, of Cannibal Holocaust, he wanted to make it as real as possible, and so he showed these actors like killing animals for real. There's like these really, really brutal scenes where like they like cut open a turtle, like its shell, in half, and you can like it's still alive and you can see its guts moving. And like
that's the scene that made me turn the movie off. Because I felt like I was about to throw up.
Oh, I believe it. Like it's fucked up.
Who directed it?
He's an Italian director.
Oh, okay. I thought it was. Isn't there like a similar premise for an Eli Roth movie?
Yeah, that's new though.
That's
this decade.
His is called The Green Inferno, and actually, The Green Inferno is the name of the movie that they are making in Cannibal Holocaust. So Eli Roth was like, he was
very inspired.
Yeah, he was inspired by Cannibal Holocaust, and his name is Ruggero Didaro. So he's a Italian filmmaker, and he wanted to, and they kill other animals too. Like they kill a monkey, like it's in very brutal fashions, and the whole. And so I read a bunch about it. I had to read it, to figure out if this movie was good or not, because I really didn't know. Like, I finished watching it, I'm like, I don't know what I just watched, I don't know if that's good, I don't know what the hell just happened. And apparently the director wanted to make the like animal murders as real as possible, because he wanted to make it feel like, if you see all these real things happening, when you see the humans being killed later on and violence against humans, you're going to think that maybe that was real too. And that actually happened. Like, when the movie came out in Italy, he was arrested for murder. Like, people thought that people were killed in the making of his movie, and I mean, it was proven that no humans died in the making of it, but he was still like charged with like indecent exposure and like all these other things. And but the movie, I do think, has a bigger point, that the end of the movie is like, who were the real savages? It does. I think it is trying to say that, like, these civilized people are just as like murderous and like kind of awful and twisted as these like savages that end up killing these guys, because the people in the documentary do a lot of like really terrible things and are just like awful people. Yeah. And so I think the movie does have a bigger point, and I think there is an argument to be made of whether or not like what the filmmakers went through to make the movie, if it was worth it. I think there is an argument there, but at least it did have a bigger point. So I don't know.
As opposed to like Last House on the Left, felt like its point was just to piss people off.
Right. Yeah. The Last House
didn't
on the
really
Left.
Have any.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That felt like it was just about the violence, and this one was like, hey, we're showing you the most violent things that you could see, but think about it, sort of thing.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, so that movie was that was probably the most intense movie I watched throughout a horror movie month.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I wanted to tell you though that I watched 2 movies. No, I watched like 5 movies from 2019, but I wanted to bring up 2 of them. We're gonna be talking about The Lighthouse later on, and I loved The Lighthouse, but we'll talk about that later on. But I wanted to bring up 2 movies that weren't actually like if you look on Letterboxd, they're credited as 2017, but they didn't really get like wide release in the United States until 2019. And those 2 movies are One Cut of the Dead, which is it's a pretty awesome movie. It's about this it's about this film these guys that are filming a movie in Japan. It's a Japanese movie, and they're making a zombie movie, and then a real zombie apocalypse breaks out, and the first 40 minutes of the movie are just one shot. And so you're just following this, like, these people that are filming the movie, and the zombies start attacking, and it's just really exciting. You have this, like, eccentric director that's, like, screaming at them to, like, keep filming and keep working, and then, like, it turns into, like, a whole different thing in the second half of the movie. But it was filmed on, like, a shoestring budget. Like, apparently if you, like, translated it from Japanese dollars to American dollars, it's, like, $20,000 or something. But there's a lot of really creative stuff that happens in the movie, and it's kind of like about the filmmaking process. So I don't know if you like horror movies or zombie movies or just movies about making movies, it's like I would highly recommend One Cut of the Dead. The other one, Tigers Are Not Afraid, was totally brilliant. That was another one that I like absolutely loved. It takes place in this place where the cartel are just like basically running the city, and in the beginning of the movie, this little girl who's the main character, her school is like, there's like a shooting happening outside of her school, and her teacher crawls over and gives her 3 pieces of chalk and says that they're 3 wishes, and the whole movie is like ambiguous of whether or not the wishes are like real or not, like whether or not they're supernatural. And she basically like goes home that day, and her mom is gone, and it's like pretty obvious that the cartel took her or something, and she eventually uses one of her wishes to wish for her mom to come back. But then her mom comes back, or something comes back as like a ghost, and so she's kind of being haunted. But then she like meets up with these other kids that are kind of orphaned because of the cartel. But I don't know, it's kind of like a fairy tale. The way the movie's filmed, it's kind of sweet. You know, there's a lot of really innocent scenes, like kids playing soccer and hanging out by a zoo, and but then there's some like really truly like real life horrifying things with the cartel, like, you know, Sicario, like that kind of shit that happens. And then there's like the supernatural side where it's like, you know, maybe ghosts and stuff. And yeah, it was just the way they balanced all of it and just told this really amazingly sweet story. I would really highly recommend that movie. I gave it 4.5 stars. That one's Tigers Are Not Afraid.
To put that on
Sounds
my
awesome.
list before the end of the year.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's pretty much my horror movie month. Thanks for giving me a second to talk about it, you guys. You know, I just love horror movie month, and I look forward to it every year. So it's pretty cool doing, for me at least, it's like cool doing something like every year like this, because I can look back at like where I was in my life the previous years, and it's just always kind of like fun to think back to, oh yeah, last year I did that, or like, shit, that was 6 years ago. You know, I was in a completely different place 6 years ago. So yeah. So let's move on. Sorry, I need to pull this up. What do we got next? Are we talking about The Lighthouse next?
Yeah.
Oh,
We're jumping
my
right into
goodness.
The Lighthouse.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of horror movie month. Okay, so
Yeah.
Sean, you're going to introduce The Lighthouse.
Oh man. That's going to be a tough one.
Well, you can read the plot summary.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. So The Lighthouse, the IMDb plot summary is the hypnotic and hallucinatory tale of two lighthouse keepers on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1980s, or I'm sorry, the 1890s. It's starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. It's directed by Robert Eggers, who also did Eggers, who he also did The Witch, which I really liked. So I believe we've all four of us have seen this movie, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a fairly difficult movie to describe. It's very weird. It's a very weird movie. It doesn't have much of a real plot to speak of that's dragging you through the movie, pulling you through the movie. It's a lot more about kind of methodically building the mental state of these characters, and them kind of slowly losing their grip on reality as they are alone on this island for the entire movie, just with each other to talk to. It's a very expressionist film as well. It kind of looks like maybe a German expressionist film. I haven't seen too many of those, but that's the kind of feel it gives you. It has a 3:4 aspect ratio, which kind of adds to that. And so it's a lot. It's kind of Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson at odds with each other, and they throughout the movie through these long extended dialogue sequences, they kind of, you start to get a sense of how they're losing grip and how they're dealing with each other and isolation. And the performances are pretty amazing. I wanted to point out Willem Dafoe's really interesting accent for the movie. It's kind of a pirate accent, but I've only ever heard anyone do that accent as like an exaggerated, like kind of doing a pirate, you know. But he really takes it.
That makes sense now.
I mean, I don't know if I looked it up. Apparently, the pirate accent comes from a Bristol. It's like a Bristol accent, but he made it sound and feel so natural, and he really made it work for him and his character.
Right, like an unexaggerated Pirates of the Caribbean thing. That you're more familiar
yeah, it's really
with.
cool. Mm-hmm. The movie also it contains a lot of Greek mythology references. In particular, Robert Pattinson is his character is based on the myth of Prometheus, who's the god who steals fire from Mount Olympus and gives it to humanity. And then me and Kelly had to look this up, but Willem Dafoe's character is based on Proteus, who's like a sea god who is like he gives prophecies, but he's like really knowledgeable, and he can see the future, and he makes prophecies, but he won't give up his knowledge or won't tell you his prophecies unless he's captured. So I thought that was really interesting. There's a lot of references throughout the movie to Greek mythology, and there's a lot of imagery that's based on, I guess, works that were based on like artworks, paintings, and things that were based on Greek myths. Another thing I really appreciated about the movie, that it was kind of a little bit tongue in cheek. In some scenes, it was kind of funny. I don't know if you remember, Derek. It was me, Derek, and Kelly saw the movie together. Do you remember the people behind us who were laughing throughout, like almost the whole movie, which was a little weird in some points, but
such a big comedy.
Yeah.
I don't know,
but I actually did think it was.
That I went with, we were all kind of laughing a lot.
Yeah,
there were a few like really funny moments.
Like when he squares off against the seagull, and it's just like cutting back and forth. I thought that was really funny. And then like when Robert Pattinson tells Willem Dafoe he doesn't like his his food, and then
He just curses at him. He just
Yeah.
screams at him like a
5
curse.
minute
Actual like
Curse,
curse.
yeah.
yeah,
Holy
yeah.
fuck! Just thinking about that scene was so great because it was like both kind of scary and also like pretty funny because he was just cursing him about this like his food, and then by the end of it, he's just
But then
Yeah.
he ends. He's like, "All right, I fancy it."
Yeah.
fine. Don't freak out
I
about it.
like your food. Yeah. So I really appreciated that it, as like serious of a movie as it was, and like how pretty horrifying and creepy it was throughout the movie. It was aware. I feel like it was aware that this type of expressionist movie can be a bit absurd to audiences, and kind of lighten the mood a little bit at certain points. That was quite clever and appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved this movie, but I mean, it was basically just the two of them the whole movie, and if you're not on board with like Robert Pattinson at this point, it's the same thing with Shia LaBeouf that I was talking about last month. Like, Robert Pattinson's he's a great actor. I mean, he's gonna be our next Batman, but he's been doing great work for a few years now, and
Robert Pattinson.
I'm
We'll
on
fix
board.
it in post.
Yeah, he's in the new Christopher Nolan movie coming out next year, and he was in The King, which I just saw.
Oh, he's in the Nolan
this
film?
movie, and-
Damn.
yeah.
Such a role.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, it's cool. These guys, these like young actors who they're super popular in like a kind of a, very specific way. Twilight, Kirsten Stewart is the same way. They're super popular with their Twilight stuff, made, ungodly amount of money. And then it's like, okay, well, for the rest of our career, we can do literally whatever we want, and we're going to choose to make good art movies. It's just pretty cool. What I really appreciated about this movie was how, like, all the stuff that you were saying about Greek mythology, like, clearly this movie had allusions to old sea time myths. I think anyone who has an interest in lighthouses or the ocean or fishing or anything like that, like, needs to see this movie. And but I think also on another level, it could just be a movie about like two guys getting stuck on an island and drinking a lot. Like it's possible that there's supernatural stuff. It's also possible that it's just two guys just kind of going cabin crazy. And I love that type of movie where it's ambiguous of what truly is happening. And
Yeah, the way with their drinking and the movie starts just stretching and playing with time, and like the whole back half of the movie just gets so confusing, and you're right along there with the characters on what's happening, what's going on, how long have I been here, and the like director of this film doesn't really give you any clues. Things just kind of keep going and going and going. And I thought the way they played with that was really, really put you in the shoes of the characters that were there, going crazy alongside them.
yeah, did this happen to you guys? For me, like, there would often be like a really dramatic or scary moment, and I'd be like, holy moly, everything changed. Like, this is crazy. But then like the next scene, it would just be kind of back to normal. Like, I just kept getting confused on everything pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Definitely.
kind of sensory overload a little bit, but also it was
the,
like
the sound design was haunting as well. Like the horn that just kept blaring, and
gosh,
the sounds of the ocean, and
totally.
yeah.
I thought the movie, I mean, you keep saying how weird it is, but even for that, the movie kept like flipping my expectations really well on the way it like concluded scenes, and even the way the film concluded as a whole. Like I could never see where it was going. Even in the middle of a scene, I had no idea where it was going. And by the end of it, it would do exactly what I didn't think, but I was even more happy for it. Like there were several times when I was like kind of applauding their decisions in my head, and it'll get a little spoilery, but yeah, there's just some great decisions they made towards the end of the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's hard to like wrap your brain around the movie, and it definitely requires additional viewings to really get a sense of what it was doing or going for, and is it yeah, how you can interpret it. But yeah, it was really interesting.
Well, yeah, I'm curious how much, like, having been through the whole movie, how much it's going to change interpretations of earlier scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not that there's, like you said, like the director doesn't really give you much to work with.
Totally.
But I'm curious if what he does give you changes some of the things that happened early on that you might not have catch,
I bet it's a different movie the second viewing. Like, none of us have seen it again, right? Like,
No.
Right.
I feel like it's a different movie the second time. Just like, I bet you'd see a lot more, and you'd really
Right.
like. I mean, there's a big factor of whether or not like they're cursed, and I feel like the second viewing you'd really wonder. You'd be looking for signs of.
Well, like you said, it's like sensory overload, so maybe you'd be able to focus more and like catch things that you didn't catch the first time around, because it's just it's so hard to track what's happening. Like thematically,
Yeah. I mean, The Witch was kind of the same way. Like his last movie, it was kind of the same way where, it was, they spoke in that New England folky accent dialect in The Witch, where I remember afterward a lot of people were complaining that they couldn't really understand what the people were saying to each other, which is like, I don't know, it's true a little bit, sure, but then you watch, I mean, I've seen The Witch like 3 or 4 times at this point, and like it's like there's a lot to that movie, and I feel like this is the same kind of way where they throw you into the situation and it's kind of hard to keep up with it, but I mean, I think it's all there.
I really appreciate that too, because it's like an added layer of focus that the viewer has to have in order to like keep up with the movie. It's like I don't know. It's like an added layer of interaction that we have with the film that I think that is a really cool thing to do. I think it's a worthwhile venture I know, like they talked about how I watched like a little documentary making of like The Witch took so long to really nail that accent, because it's such a weird, like dead thing that doesn't exist anymore. And there's not a lot of like, there's no recordings of it, back then. So it's like, I don't know, that extra layer though, I think that just adds so much to the movie. This one was the same. It was like their accents just make it so much more engaging.
I wonder if that's just going to be this director's thing.
You got to really pay
from
attention
now on. Like he'll keep making period pieces, and he'll have the actors speak exactly how they would in that time frame.
Yeah.
Rumor has it he's going to be making a new Nosferatu movie.
Yeah.
That's supposedly his next movie, which is pretty sweet, because I mean, Nosferatu, the one from the 20s, is like, it has some really great imagery. I mean, it's a classic. It's like one of the first horror movies, but the Werner Herzog one is pretty twisted, and I don't know. I would love to see what he does with Nosferatu.
For sure.
I gave this movie, I think like most of us, 4.5 stars. And I want to say that like this movie is such a complete vision in just every aspect and every department. It kind of reminded me if like Wes Anderson was to do a straight up horror film, like from the set design to the aspect ratio and the black and white and the way people talk and the framing of the camera. It's like this guy has so much control and at getting like exactly what he wants in this film. And yeah, you mentioned the sound design, Sean. It's like there's not a single moment in this film that's lacking in delivering that like final vision that this director had, and it's so cool seeing it all come together perfectly.
Okay, do we have anything else to add about The Lighthouse? I mean, I feel like we could do a spoiler section and talk about it really in depth, but
get into our,
Save
in-depth
spoiler for
thoughts
Joker.
about- yeah.
So we're gonna do spoilers for Joker. So I think we should move on from the Lighthouse. But I mean, all of us gave it a high recommendation. But I feel like you have to be into like arty movies. Like it's. I'm really curious if it's going to get like Academy Award nominations or anything like that. Like I feel like Willem Dafoe absolutely like deserves recognition. I mean, obviously the Academy is like all like political and everything, so who knows what anything gets. And I don't think this movie made a lot of money either, but
Right.
I hope it gets some attention because I don't know. It's different. It's special.
Definitely.
So Brandon, Light of My Life.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about it.
Okay, so the IMDb. Parent and child journey through the outskirts of society a decade after a pandemic has wiped out half the world's population. As a father struggles to protect his child, their bond and the character of humanity is tested. Half the world's population this film's talking about is all the females. It's very much semi-like Children of Men in that way. Females can't have babies in this one. Almost every female in the film dies before in the past, and his daughter isn't the only one alive. There's a few still left, but basically in that society, women have become like this kind of very controlled, horrifically controlled, like coveted object, as you imagine, that clans of people need in order to sustain themselves and try to provide a future. So that thought.
So the world is just slowly dying, basically.
Yeah, minus a few women that are still alive and captured.
Okay.
That survived, that have an immunity to this plague. So this is what?
So unlike Children of Men, women can still have babies. It's just they're all dying.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just comparing Children of Men as like the post-apocalyptic like plague thing.
Right.
And
No, it makes sense. Yeah, that's a perfect comparison. It just
Different type of disease.
Clarify.
So Light of My Life is directed and starring Casey Affleck. And the daughter in this film, Anna Panowski, she did a great job alongside Casey too. This is Casey's second film he's directed. He did this really weird movie with Joaquin Phoenix. Does anyone remember what that was called? The like mockumentary.
I'm not there.
Yeah, I'm not there.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
I'm still here.
I'm still here. Yeah.
So, which I didn't
I'm
see.
not there was the Bob Dylan one.
But so far, what an interesting, creative first and second movie career. So I saw this in Mexico City. A kind of thing I'm enjoying is seeing like indie movies in different countries when I do visit them. It's cool just to like take a night and go check out a cool theater that you can find. And I found an awesome like bar cinema there that was really low key and had a lot of great films. But you can't see foreign films in Mexico because there's not going to be English subtitles. So I stuck with this one. This movie really, really impressed me. It's a very low budget film, and they definitely take the like story and world building a long way with that tiny budget. It's mostly them like surviving in Pacific Northwest, kind of like that indie film Leave No Trace or something like that. And there's very little actors in it. The towns they do come by are very small, like post-apocalyptic sets. They're not like storming through Los Angeles or anything. And mostly everything's alluded to in the dialogue, but in really like natural ways. And this is just a film about him and his daughter she's going through puberty, and there is a lot to deal with that because she can no longer pose as a little boy anymore. She's starting to show, and people are starting to notice. So it's getting very scary. And I recommend this, maybe even a part of like a horror movie month. It's a little bit thriller, a little bit horror. And I don't know, it takes a great like low budget angle at this stuff and creates a really fascinating film out of it.
Nice. Yeah, I had never heard of this movie until you saw it. So I don't know. It must have gone really like under the radar over here. had you heard of it before? Like,
No,
was it
I
on
had
your radar?
not. I found the movie theater and I was like, holy shit, this looks great. And this movie happened to be showing that night.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, so Casey Affleck, right? Like, yeah, like, did he like show signs of being like a great director? Like, I know, like the last one I saw, I'm Still Here, and it's pretty weird. You know, it's basically like a documentary. Like, that was when Joaquin Phoenix was going to quit acting and be a rapper. Like, do you remember when he showed up on Letterman and he was like chewing gum and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And like that was like all part of like the shtick for. Anyway, like I feel like that was like not really like a true movie. You know, it was like kind of like a fun, weird, goofy thing. So
It's
like
kind of like half documentary, half mockumentary.
yeah,
But I think all like, yeah,
It's a real
it's kinda like-
documentary about a fake thing.
It's
that's
almost like Borat, honestly, because
Right.
like I think all of his interactions with other people are real,
right,
but there's also like some stuff where it's just him acting,
totally.
like him and some other character acting together. Or maybe not.
Anyway, it's
Yeah,
a weird
something kind
it's
of-
a weird movie. So as like I kind of feel like this is like Casey Affleck's like first movie in some ways, like his first like, you know, real movie. Like, did he show signs of like, you know?
Definitely. He does a lot of fascinating things in the movie, like these long kind of extended dialogue scenes between him and his daughter in the movie, and both of their acting really, really shines during those moments, and it really helps like build a connection. The movie's like very beautiful and well shot. There's some good like anti-framing in there that kind of works well for this uneasy movie. And then the intensity that he builds in some of these scenes, like it's really great. Like Jeff Cannato always says in the Slash Film Cast, is like you're watching characters be smart, and it's just really fun to see, even in these like incredibly intense moments. And even like the fighting and the violence and brutality is shot in like a really great way. Casey Affleck is kind of like a pacifist, right? Is that the word? Yeah, pacifist. And the way someone like that would fight, you know, it's like no one knows how to fight. You just kind of like grab each other's clothes and brawl around and break shit on accident. And it's just this really like rough, raw way of showing it. And every time that happened, it was like different and unique, but just looked so real. So I think there was a ton of great choices he made in this film.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. I generally like these, like that kind of world movie, like those post-apocalyptic, like on the road kind of movies are really well, like inherently designed to just be interesting. Yeah, I'm just curious how you think it finds its own like place to exist, because that's kind of becoming a pretty saturated story. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like
There's 1,000 post-apocalyptic movies or end of the world movies.
well, and
Right.
there's a lot of like father-daughter kind of, or even if they're not really father-daughter, but you know, people, you know, that relationship on the road in a post-apocalyptic movie. And you know, like Last of Us really comes to mind when you're describing this, and I'm just curious how well it justifies telling that story again.
It's very Last of Us. I didn't even think of that video game comparison, but yeah. It's very Last of Us, except for the protagonist, or Casey Affleck, is not some like macho gunslinger. He's a very calm, like collected, nerdy guy that just wants to protect his daughter, but also not like even, and just wants to avoid every situation of harm completely. Like that's his goal, is to never even have to fight anyone to begin with. So it kind of takes that stance, and that's a little different. Also, the teenage daughter's like becoming like angsty and rebellious in those years of one's life, as we all do. And so that's kind of a new angle to see in a post-apocalyptic movie, is this girl kind of just getting frustrated with everything and with life. like we all did in middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Hope you guys see it.
Who's
Yeah.
a better director, Ben Affleck or Casey Affleck?
Ben.
I mean, Casey Affleck hasn't fallen off the deep end, right? So, yeah, I don't know.
Has Ben?
Ben Affleck's made
only
two
did
bad
one
movies in a row.
right?
He
Oh, did he? What was his second
Oh,
one?
I never saw his first two good films, so that's my problem, I guess.
I think he's only
Gone,
made three.
Gone Baby
Gone Baby
and
Gone
The
is
Town
amazing.
are
The
really
Town is
good.
amazing. Argo won Best Picture.
Yeah, I
And
wasn't a
then
fan
he
of
made
Argo.
that gangster movie.
Argo's a ton of fun.
But then he
Brandon
made that,
considers Argo a bad movie.
it's
He made
not a
like
bad
one
movie,
bad
though.
gangster crime movie or something.
Yeah, he
Didn't
did
he?
like the
I don't
gangster
even-
one, which
I didn't
is
see it,
a miss, but I didn't hear it was terrible. It just wasn't that good.
Yeah.
Yeah, give him a few more movies, and we'll see what happens.
Who's a better actor?
Cool.
I've always
think
been a
that's an
fan of
overrated.
Casey Affleck, and I think he's
Yeah,
I really
a better
like
actor
Casey
than his
Affleck.
brother.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that movie's available for streaming right now. I mean, I don't think you can get for free anywhere, but like Vudu or Amazon Prime, you could rent it for streaming. And actually on Vudu it's like $5. I have it like on my wish list. So I'm gonna try to watch it really soon. Probably I'm gonna hopefully do it the next month. So I can check back with you if you want.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's a
so
lot of movies
let's
coming up though.
let's move on to the main event. Derek, do you want to introduce the Joker?
Sure. Everyone knows the Joker of Batman fame, but the plot synopsis of this film is: in Gotham City, mentally troubled comedian Arthur Fleck is disregarded and mistreated by society. He then embarks on a downward spiral of revolution and bloody crime. This path brings him face to face with his alter ego, the Joker.
Ooh.
I feel like IMDb needs to work on their synopses. I don't know.
I don't
They're
think
just-
IMDb writes their synopses.
They must not. They're always weird and like kind of off. But yeah, this movie's pretty big. I'm really surprised with how much money it's making. It's
Holy
like
shit.
worldwide almost at $1 billion.
It's
Which
like number
is
63 or
nuts.
something on the highest grossing movies of all time.
God damn.
Yeah, that's fucking crazy for what it is. It's just so weird because it's directed by Todd Phillips, which is weird in general. And it kind of felt like it came together really quick too. Like I feel like we were only hearing about this within the last couple months, at least maybe in the last year, but still, like I don't know. And it's pretty low budget for this kind of movie, for a DC property. $50 million, I think, or something. Anyways, but I really, really liked this movie. It was really, I mean, the trailers kind of sold it for me. They looked really good.
Them trailers were amazing.
Yeah, the trailers were amazing, and I felt like the movie did the trailers justice. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but like the trailers were so amazing that it's easy for that kind of thing to be overlooked. But I think the movie, when it delivered exactly what I was hoping it would, which is it was a unique looking movie. I love like the cinematography and like the weird saturations they used in here. Like it's kind of weird look. I don't know. It's like some things are tinted in different ways depending on how the scenes break down. And I'm just thinking like there's the shot of like the stairwell that he dances on. It's just such a weird color scheme, and I like just that look. The whole movie has that throughout. It's just really cool looking. And it's kind of a unique, grounded direction to take a big property, like essentially a Batman movie. It's not about Batman, but it's definitely, you got to remember that this movie is very much DC, and it's very much existing in those worlds. Whether or not people are seeing it as that. I think it very much is that.
Or whether or not there'll be crossover, right? There's not like, it's not explicitly like going to be crossed over with anything, but it could be.
Yeah, for sure. But also, I think, like, in the discussion of this movie, a lot of people are disregarding, like, its peers, like, what it's existing around, which is, like, the Avengers and Justice League. And, you know, this is a world of superhero movies. And I feel like no one's really comparing this to superhero movies. They're only comparing it to movies that clearly inspired its style. Which is fair, I think, because it's very heavily influenced by, you know, Scorsese films and stuff. So, but I think that's what makes it so unique and so cool. It's cool to experience this kind of story through that lens, because we haven't seen anything through that lens before, or anything from this genre through that lens. So it's a very unique way. And by that lens, I mean like a grounded, gross, kind of grimy crime thriller. I don't think they've really ever done that with any superhero movie. So it's just a cool shock to that genre, I think. And I like that they were, especially like Warner Brothers, being willing to let them do that with this character. Like, understanding, you know, they're not going to be able to sell toys of like this murderer. Like, they can't.
They sold
I don't know. It's like
a lot of costumes.
Yeah.
Halloween costumes.
Right. But it's just so much of everything is being consumed by Disney nowadays. And like that machine grinding out like so much just crap about every single movie. It's really overwhelming. And it's nice to see this movie that just kind of sits there on its own. They just kind of put it out, and it's like, you know, if you like it, you like it. If not, we're not shoving it down anyone's throat.
It seems to be what Warner Brothers is doing now. Like, nothing really has to be in continuity with anything else. It's like it. You can probably imagine that they are all in continuity, but it's fine if they aren't exactly.
Right.
They're not trying to make a cohesive franchise where everything fits into something else. And I think that's if nothing else, a great alternative to what Marvel's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes without saying, Joaquin Phoenix kills it in this movie. It's a really interesting and different take on that character that we haven't seen on film, at least. I loved it. It was so engaging for me, at least. I think just because it was such a intense and different take than we've seen, it just really kind of grabs a hold and doesn't really let go. And by the time, I just remember sitting in the theater, like, especially during for the last 30 minutes of the movie, my wife's hands never left her face in just kind of shock of how thrilling and intense the movie gets towards the end. It's just like, you just cannot look away. And yeah. What did you guys think?
I saw this movie with a group of people that I didn't really know very well, and it was a really interesting experience.
We all watch the movie with a group of people we didn't know?
I think I just saw it with Christina.
I mean, in the theater. Sorry, guys, this is a bad joke.
And walking out of the theater, like, after seeing such a brutal, just like heavy, what should have been like a comic book movie, I think it was very unexpected, and it was just like hard to like muster up the words as soon as we like walked out of the theater. I kind of wish I'd seen it by myself so I could just kind of leave and like internally process it without immediately having to have a reaction with a bunch of people I didn't really know too well. But it's just a different experience for a comic book film. But I don't think I loved it as much as you, but God, it was a really unique comic book ride, and I give it like 4 out of 5 stars, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly just thought it was okay. Like, I feel kind of weird about it because, like, so many people loved it. Like, it got such a huge reaction. You know, it was like, it got such a huge reaction. And it seemed like, everyone that I saw was, like, you gave it 5 stars, Derek. I saw Sean gave it 4.5, you know, and, like, people were, like, going out of their way to, like, reach out to me to be like, Joker, right? Holy, you know, and
Holy moly.
And but then, like, a lot of critics that I follow were like panning it, you know, they were giving it like 1, 2 stars, like, this is crap, you know. And I don't think it's crap. Like, I think it's a very well made movie. Like, I think it's put together very well, and Joaquin Phoenix's performance is phenomenal. I just thought it was, like, okay, though. Like, I don't know. I wasn't truly blown away by it. And, I don't know. I just kind of, like, I don't know. It kind of strikes me as, like, a movie that, like, it did all the research, you know? It, like, knew what to do to make a good movie. But, and I feel like it wanted to say something, but I felt like it was it was weirdly like it was both very specific, like it was very specific about this one character, but then I felt like it wanted to make like a broad point, and I don't think the broad points really like landed at all for me. And it felt like it was a movie that was trying to be really important, and I don't think it really like got there for me. So I don't know. I feel kind of weird because I'm just kind of like neutral about it. Like I enjoyed it. I loved Joaquin Phoenix's performance, and I just don't know if I'll ever watch it again. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I obviously I really liked the movie. I think I was also a lot of that was I was quite pleasantly surprised with the movie. I wasn't too excited, especially when I first heard about this. It's like, oh God, we're gonna get another Joker movie, another Joker interpretation, and then when I saw the first trailers and saw kind of what the movie was going to do, I was like, do we really need to go darker with the Joker? I feel like each iteration is trying to just out grit the last one, is just trying to get grittier and darker and more nihilistic and just going into it, I wasn't that excited, and I watched it, and I thought they made, like, kind of right off the bat, they made a lot of really interesting and clever decisions with the character. Another issue I had with it is I thought that they were even going maybe even further away from what I believe the Joker to be. Like, you know, I thought, as much as I love Heath Ledger's Joker, it's an incredible adaptation of the Joker. It's not really what Joker is, you know. It's it kind of took Joker and did something new and interesting and very Heath Ledger, Christopher Nolan-y with it. And then, like, I don't even know what the fuck Jared Leto's Joker was trying to do, but that was just
we don't talk about Jared Leto's Joker.
Yeah, let's just move on from that. But and so I thought they were, you know, kind of going in that direction, trying to push Joker even further from what my Joker is, and but I was surprised. Like, it actually fit with like a Mark Hamill Joker that I've fallen in love with.
Sean,
like,
would you say that Mark Hamill is like your Joker?
Yeah. That absolutely. Like, I've read a few comics with the Joker in it, and like from talking to Colton for years about DC and the Joker, like I've kind of gotten a sense of what the Joker is from the comics. But yeah, pretty much the vast majority of my experience with the Joker is Mark Hamill, and that's kind of what I understand the true, like the core of Joker, like what everything should kind of be adapted from is. And I really liked that. I felt like they kind of got back to that, the performancy, the theatrical aspect of the Joker, the comedy, drama, tragedy of the Joker. And I was pleasantly surprised by that. There's a lot to be said about the laugh thing that they did in this movie. But when I first kind of came to that realization, there's like an early scene when he's cracking up. I think maybe even his first scene, he's just laughing in the office. I was like, what the hell was that? That was weird. And then like a couple scenes later that he's on the bus and he does the same thing, but he hands that woman the card, and it clicked with me, and I was like, oh, I thought that was such a clever way to introduce the laugh and to kind of make the laugh a little more, make it more a part of who he is, and like bring it back to earth, down to earth a little bit more. But yeah, so I was very pleasantly surprised with it. I also liked how, this isn't the first movie to do this, but I feel like this is, for me, is a movie that made me realize that the superhero movie is a genre in and of itself now, or it's really kind of moved in that direction where we're not making like action movies with superheroes in them, or we're not making another genre of movie with superheroes in it. This is a movie that exists on its own, in the superhero genre. It's taking like the superhero genre and then taking a character from it and making its own kind of movie. And yeah, I know it's a crime movie and it fits into other genres, but it's, I feel like it doesn't have to justify itself to take the Joker as a character and to make another kind of movie out of it. You don't have to have a reason. It just kind of exists on its own. And I think that really worked for this movie for me. Yeah.
I feel like that's where comic books have been forever, on these characters that have been redone thousands and thousands of times as new artists come in and do their own series on it. It just has a beginning, middle, and end, and it can be whatever genre it wants. And these movies are really turning into that.
It sounds specifically that's really where DC's headed. They want people to come in and do their own interpretation of a comic book or character and just make it good. Just do your own interpretation, just like we do, if we're running a comic book, studio. People do Batman runs and Superman runs, and they're all disconnected from each other generally, but it's just people's interpretation, and that's totally 100%. I agree with that. That's exactly how this feels, and it sounds like that's what they're doing now. And you can kind of take what you want and mush them together if you want, but they're not necessarily being like that explicit about it.
Like that's how
James Gunn's Suicide Squad type stuff.
I feel like Batman Begins was that way a little bit with like
that's kind of true.
I feel like Batman Begins was a film noir. I have it on my film noir list, and just the way that he operates in the shadows and interrogates people and puts pieces together, interviews and solves the mystery in Gotham, in this nihilistic place. Same thing where it doesn't really feel like it's trying that hard, like to be something. So that's where I feel like the Joker was trying, though, like trying a little too hard for me. Like I feel like Batman Begins was like, it like effortlessly was a film noir, where this one was like pretty much like by the books a Martin Scorsese movie. Like anyone who's seen The King of Comedy or Taxi Driver, it's like a pretty straight up mixture of the two of those movies. And it's like I think that's why like a lot of critics really heaped on it, because it's like, it just like straight up like, you could say that it ripped off those movies, like pretty explicitly so. Like, and I mean, there's one way of looking at it is like there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. I think last year there was that movie, and also with Joaquin Phoenix.
Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah. What was that one called? You Were Never
Really Here.
Yeah, You Were Never Really Here, and I feel like that was also like heavily inspired by Taxi Driver. And I said at the time when that one came out, like, clearly this was inspired by Taxi Driver, but also like Taxi Driver came out in the 70s. Like, it's okay to like kind of like, rip off a movie a little bit that came from the 70s. And so I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing to rip off or copy or pull ideas from older movies that you're inspired from. I just don't know if the Joker was like, I don't know, I just feel like Joker wasn't very subtle about it.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I get that. For me, it wasn't like it was a beat for beat remake of Taxi Driver with the Joker in it, as I think a lot of critics that I've heard have kind of made it sound. Plot wise,
really has no plot.
Yeah,
like no plot.
I mean,
like,
Taxi Driver has absolutely
stolen
no
between
plot.
them.
This movie, I feel like, is a little bit more plot driven. But
it's
like,
pretty close to the King of
plotting in
Comedy.
its-
What I keep hearing is that people are saying that it's closer plot wise to the King of Comedy.
I would agree with that. It's closer plot wise to King of Comedy, but it's still, I mean, it's not that close.
Right. I mean, they're not
aside
like,
from maybe the climax is similar. I could agree with that, but the ending, or not even the ending, but the kind of the climax and on the
Do we need to
get
say
into that in
spoilers or
but-
anything? Are we doing?
Yeah, do we want to get into
Let's
spoilers
do it.
at this point? I mean,
Yeah,
we're kind
I
of
had
like,
another big question for you guys,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
I thought
I'm into-
maybe last minute we should jump into spoilers first. before
Yeah.
we
I'm into
get
spoilers for this. So yeah, from this
Yeah.
point on, we're not gonna be holding back. We're gonna be talking about spoilers for the Joker. So spoiler warning. Turn off the episode if you don't want to be spoiled. But we're gonna be talking about details with the Joker without any sort of hesitancy. So spoiler warning. Here we go.
Yeah, obviously the ending scene that is most similar to King of Comedy is the late night show.
Late night show.
Yeah.
So I was not a big fan of the late night show scene. I thought and I was really scared they were going to end it there, but I thought his monologue, I'd love to re-listen to it again, but I was kind of like cringing a little bit in the movie theater when that monologue was going on. And right after the gunshot hit, I was like, oh no, they're going to cut now and I'm going to hate this movie. Oh no. But then when they opened it up outside of the studio, it totally reeled me back in and got me like super like thrilled. And I loved that they added on that extra 10 minutes. And it kept me from having that interview part really ruin the movie for me. Did anyone get cringy vibes from that
I feel
monologue?
like that.
I got some
I
cringy
did not
vibes
at all.
a little bit from Robert De Niro. I don't really know why. I thought maybe at parts I thought he was a little cringy, but I don't know.
I thought he
I
did
didn't really
better
get that from
than
Joker.
usual with these older actors kind of be brought in as like a. I don't know. He was clearly brought in because of the themes of the movie, and I feel like it was very much because of similarities of other things he's in and stuff like that. Like that kind of felt like its own reference to like. He definitely wasn't just like a guy trying out for this movie.
It felt,
like,
yeah,
you
it
got
felt,
the part, Robert. It's like no, they wanted Robert De Niro to play that part specifically, and a lot of times those parts don't tend to be done very well. And I thought they did better. I can kind of see what you're saying about Robert De Niro, but I think they did better than that part normally ends up in like those kind of roles, you know, when an actor is brought in to to play a specific character as a reference to older movies that he's in.
I was more just talking about him recapping his mindset from the past 2 hours of the film and just like.
Well, yeah, you're talking about the Joaquin Phoenix monologue,
yeah,
for sure. But I didn't get cringy vibes at all from that. I thought it was just a really intense situation. Mm-hmm. I didn't really have any time to like.
I was more on the edge of my seat. Like,
I was more worried about him, blowing people's heads off than worried about him saying the wrong words. But
yeah, and I thought I thought that scene was somewhat cleverly written in that it was him, I guess making his case to the underbelly of Gotham. That was
of all the times for exposition. It kind of made sense.
What?
Of all the times,
it was a lot of
I didn't see that as an expositional scene, really.
No, I didn't think it was for exposition. I think it was just
wearing your emotions on your sleeve. That that was, I guess, set up decently realistically.
I mean, that was because it was the climax of his breaking point was that moment. So it's like everything's kind of leading up to that moment right there, and so that's when all his emotions kind of come out. And I think that fits really well, and it's fairly well written. I think it's less preachy than people are making it out to seem. Yeah. I don't think the movie was trying to make a point. Like everyone thinks that for some reason this Todd Phillips random Joker movie is trying to be deep and have a big philosophical and societal point. I very much disagree with that, and that's not the way the Joker would be either. So I feel like that's a weird thing that people are kind of shoving
several
on
times.
What?
That he didn't want it to. You're right. That he didn't want it to be that way.
Well, yeah, and literally in that same scene, he says he's just killing people because it's fun. So he does have a rate, he is angry at society, but I don't think he has a point to make. He just wants them to die.
I don't know, guys. I felt like the movie subtextually used a lot of imagery that reflected scary things that you see in real life. I felt like they were purposefully between the protests and the riots and just a lot of the imagery was stuff that you could see in the news. And then the whole thing against how people were revolting against rich people. I mean, it kind of struck a chord with Occupy Wall Street, that type of stuff. I felt like the movie I felt like the movie was using real intense imagery to to at least put it in there. And maybe it didn't have a point, but then in my opinion that's irresponsible. That's that's dumb. That makes me dislike the movie even more. If you're I just made a fun movie and use this cool stuff, that's dumb. That's really stupid.
Those scenes for me were really integral in defining Gotham, in how that to me felt like a good lead into the Gotham that we see in Batman Begins, where it's this completely destroyed, degenerated society where there's literal giant portions of the city that are just completely a war zone, and that's what this felt like. It was all the prelude to that. To me, I thought it was a perfect setup for that by adding in those scenes, and without those scenes it wouldn't be. It would feel just like Chicago or something, it would feel much more like a real city as opposed to this comic book city of Gotham that it takes place in.
I also really appreciate the decision to make it Gotham that, I thought that they might go down the road of the path of having Joker be the one that kills Thomas Wayne and creates Batman. But I liked how it was it was kind of the Joker's downward spiral was mirrored by Gotham's downward spiral, and then it was at the climax of that that Batman kind of in essence was created in the back alley
Yeah, it's kind
and
of.
I thought that was really clever. Like the creation of both of these two things come from this society that utterly failed. And I did want to be a little bit more specific. It's not that I didn't think that the movie was not doing anything or it wasn't showing anything interesting about society or depicting something. It wasn't trying to have a point. Like it wasn't trying to say like, you know, give a purpose. It certainly was saying things about, it was depicting a scenario where society has failed its most vulnerable people, you know, and out of that failure has, you know, something even more ugly cropped up. And it certainly was depicting the class structure breaking apart at the seams as, you know, the wealthy are trying to hold it together. And, you know, it definitely was showing that. And I hesitate to say it kind of had something to say about that, but it wasn't trying to solve any problems, I guess. It wasn't trying to provide any solutions. I don't think it promised that it would, and I don't think it had to.
Yeah.
I think it was an interesting depiction of a complex society that failed this guy and who needed its help, and and then kind of with a superhero-y twist to it.
You almost touched on it a little bit, but I think with the Joker's ending that they had in here, and I know this isn't a totally original thought, but I do remember walking out of the theater having this in the back of my mind, like kind of curious where the like longer con was in this film and where the like supervillain was in this film. And the people made, in the ending of this movie showed that the people made the Joker a super villain. Like they chose him. He didn't create himself. They chose him to be like the representative. You know, they're passing them up on his arms as like this important figure after he gets hit by the car and everything at the end.
He like doesn't even know,
and he doesn't even understand what's happening. And I'm guessing it's going to be like, because of that, he's then going to become some like plotting, conniving mastermind. But I wish that, and sorry, people have said this before, but I wish in this movie there was some longer con that he was a part of to get him to be this like respected figure within the system, or within the system that's falling apart. And I feel like a movie was missing like that big aha moment that like he did this, he was the reason why he got on the talk show, he was the reason for the rioting, and now he's the one who caused like somebody to crash into the police car so he could get out and then be carried on the shoulders of like the people. But none of that was the case. He didn't have a lot of
agency. Like there wasn't a lot of agency with like him with the plot.
Who did Taxi Driver?
Well, yeah,
You know,
and I kind of felt like this is probably the most I mean, it's obviously the most sympathetic approach to the character they've done, because we've never really ever had any amount of sympathy because we have no backstory in any of the other Joker on film interpretations. But I kind of felt like that at least it just based off the quality of most of the movie, I assumed that all was intentional choice. That's not the Joker that they're trying to make. He's not the big mental threat. That's like, he's not Heath Ledger where he has like hospitals armed to explode like months beforehand.
That would be fascinating. Like, if they carry that through the next few films, having him not be that, that could be its own unique thing. I just hope in the next film he's not like all of a sudden a like genius. Which I think he might be. Yeah. But I hope you're right.
I guess I kind of agree with that. I had this similar thoughts. I guess I don't know how you do that and have kind of have the same outcome as this movie had that I really appreciated with the society creating Joker. And, you know, I guess like I feel like having the Joker be the agent for that change detracts from what the movie was going for. Maybe there was a good middle ground that they could have achieved. Maybe they didn't quite get something, but I wonder if that criticism of the movie comes more from people's expectations of it rather than...
Yeah. I hope it's not that way, but I was, yeah. It could be my expectations.
Mm-hmm. I did have a question for you guys. So yeah, the Joker in this movie is a lot more of a much more realistic portrayal of mental illness than any other Joker that we've seen so far. And I think me and Nick, maybe a while, I don't even remember when, I think we may have had a little bit of a conversation about how mental illness is portrayed and in cinema, and how there's a lot of stigma attached to mental illness, and how movies can reinforce those stigmas in society. And I think I believe it was this conversation, we talked about the Joker, and what I said about the Joker is that he's so far away outside of any kind of diagnosable mental illness that it's not, at least at that time, I didn't think it was harmful in that sense. It wasn't creating a real stigma about mental illness because of that. Clearly this movie, I can't really make that argument. And they definitely made the choice to bring in real diagnosable mental illness to this character.
They didn't diagnose him.
And I was just wondering what...
I was just going to ask,
that is
what
true.
did
they did not
diagnose him with?
No, they didn't, but
disorder?
they definitely brought that diagnosable mental illnesses to his characters.
They
didn't
could.
actually give a name. Some professional probably could make a diagnosis from this movie. I also respect that they didn't provide any diagnosis. Maybe in part because when the movie took place, they didn't really have solid diagnoses for these mental illnesses. But yeah, I was just wondering what your guys' thoughts on that were. Does bringing it into the more realistic realm, does that show people that these are real things and that these illnesses are real and are real problems in our society? Or does it portray them in a way where people are now more likely to fear these mental illnesses? Or
I think that's on people for lumping all mental illnesses together. I don't think it's the movie's responsibility to say, like, this caused him to be a murderer, but not all people that have that are necessarily murderers. Like, you just have to be a normal, smart person to know that. And I think all people who are able to commit heinous acts like that are mentally ill in some way or another. Like, they are not of normal mind. And I don't think there's any other way to do it.
I do really appreciate with this movie how they how it was like a plot point of how he was going to counseling and he was having treatment, he was on medication, and then it got cut, like his funding got cut. And I mean, as you were saying earlier, like a big point of this movie is that society kind of like left him behind, and he needed help, and no one was helping him. And I mean, I think that was a good touch that they had that as a plot point with this movie. You know.
Mm-hmm. What are people saying about it, I guess?
Well, I've heard both things. I've heard people say that, that seeing realistic portrayal of mental illness up on screen has kind of normalized it for them and has helped them identify with certain things that he's going through in the movie. But I've also heard that maybe actually, I haven't heard anything I haven't heard anything negative from people who have heard or have a mental illness.
Well, there was
from this movie. It's
really
more
about mental
critics
illness, but there was like that whole, before the movie came out, there was like the whole fear aspect of like how this was going to sympathize with a killer and someone who was mentally deranged and capable and willing to be a mass murderer, and it was going to inspire killings themselves, and like people were legitimately worried about it, like I mean, nothing happened, like thank goodness that there were no movie theaters that were shot up or anything, but like people were legitimately worried about it, and like people that we know.
I'm not on board with that mindset. But, like, I think that's always a positive thing. Like everyone was a poor innocent child at some point, just like the rest of us, and to know their story is, I don't know, to know more about life, and I don't think that can ever be a bad thing. To learn the history of some psychotic killer and try to find the intricacies of why they became that way in order to sympathize how they became what they are now, I think it can only be a positive thing.
I don't know, like I don't really have a lot of interest in getting to know that much about a serial killer. I personally think it's kind of like gross how our society is like obsessed with like real life crime, like real true crime. Yeah, like I think it's like pretty gross. I don't know. There's a documentary that came out like a few years ago called The Tower. Brandon, maybe you saw it, but it was like about the sniper attack that was on that college campus. Can't remember which college campus it was, but the movie was all about the victims, and how they survived and how the guy was eventually stopped, but they never said his name and they didn't give any background on him, and like I respected that. I was like, I'm so much more interested in the people who like do good in the world than figuring out why the serial killers do crazy things. And I but maybe that's just me, and I don't have the facts and figures to like back it up or whatever, but I could see potentially someone being inspired by a killer, like I think that's why there are a lot of copycat mass shootings around. Like I think people have seen that you can get away with it and you can become famous for being a mass killer, so then people do it sometimes. But I also wasn't afraid that a theater was going to be shot up. I didn't think that was going to happen. And I think that this movie was way too specific about this one specific person that's clearly a made up person I don't know. I thought that if anything, this movie was more of what Sean was just saying about how like I think that there's more relatability to it than about like inspiring. It wasn't really a call of action at all. It wasn't anything like that.
It's kind of like an age-old, Natural Born Killers is a movie that exists and has been made before. That's the ultimate extreme version of this, right? It's kind of like...
I mean, this is nowhere near Natural Born Killers.
Yeah. It's kind of like the age-old concern about following, not an anti-hero, maybe it's an anti-hero, but following the villain as your protagonist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, they're anti-heroes, I guess.
Bonnie
Bonnie and Clyde run around killing people. I mean, that's
a classic. Bonnie and Clyde. Damn.
And those ones like actually glorify their violence and make it fun and
right.
Yeah,
because it's
one
fun,
thing
Jan.
About this.
Did I get
Every
that right?
kill in this movie is very upsetting.
Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he loves... Yeah, his violence is fun.
That's basically what we've been talking about the last 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We should just insert Quentin Tarantino's voice.
Nothing fun about the violence in this movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It's shocking. All the violence that happens. There's not actually that much violence in this movie,
not that
really.
much.
Yeah.
There's like a handful of shootings, but they all happen with a bang. Like, I mean, clearly it's a shooting happens with a bang, but it's like I feel like all of them are very sudden and explosive and shocking. Like each one of them, one of them is like, holy crap, that just happened. Did that really just happen?
Yeah.
And then you like,
ugly and
yeah.
Back to that point, Nick. Like I've actually recently been I just binged season 2 of Mindhunters, which the premise of that show is the FBI creating kind of a psychological profiling system to help catch serial killers. And
That's the David Fincher show, right?
Yeah, David Fincher. Although I don't think he's too involved in it anymore. I think he directed the first 2 episodes, and then I don't know if he's done anything really directly with it since.
Okay.
But it's just and it's all about attempting to understand really what mental illness. It's trying to understand the complexities of the human brain. It's not, and to me, like, saying that doing so is justifying it. It's like trying to understand why, why anything bad happens in the world. Why do we get so much crime and violence out of certain poverty levels? Or, it's not trying to justify anything. Or it's attempting to understand it, to make realistic changes to our society that maybe if we know the problem, we can start, or if we understand the problem, we can start to make real changes. I don't know if this movie necessarily, gives us any enlightenment that we don't already have, but I also agree with Brandon. I reject the idea that attempting to understand something like that isn't justifying it at all, or even sympathizing with it. It's not, it's something completely different.
Yeah, I don't.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't think that's what I'm saying. I don't think.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying.
I think that's what some people are saying. I don't think that's what you're saying either.
Okay. Well, guys, we've been talking for like an hour and a half, so I feel like we should probably wrap it up. I did want to bring up an idea I had for a Joker sequel. But there's this, just real quick, there's this really great episode of the animated series where it's called Joker's Millions. And I think that would be an awesome Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie where he's just like, it's years, and it's like he's been a criminal for years and years and years, but like people are tired of him. Like he's just not that great at being a criminal anymore, and he's just super broke. And he lives in a really shitty apartment, and then this gangster dies and gives him all of his money, and so then he goes out and spends like all this money, and it's all looking to be legit. So Batman's like spying on him, and it seems like it's like all legit, but then turns out the money isn't real, and the guy was in debt. So now Joker's back in debt, and he gets caught by the federal government and has to go to prison because of like tax evasion and stuff. So,
so real.
Yeah.
That would so
really
work.
Great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's wrap it up. Brandon, what movie are you excited about for next month? November.
I just saw the trailer for Ford vs. Ferrari, even though I've been hearing about it for a while.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I was in theaters and I couldn't avoid it. But it's James Mangold's new film. He directed Logan and the second Wolverine film as well. So he's
Walk
a
the
really,
line, too.
really,
He's a good
really great director.
310
And
to Yuma.
This movie already has good reviews, so I'm excited for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sean, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, second to everything that everyone is saying on this list, but Jojo Rabbit, I'm super excited for. I'm probably going to see it this weekend.
Oh, yeah, it's out.
It's in one theater in Seattle, or one AMC theater at least. It's probably in some other ones, but Yeah, limited release. I'm really excited. Should be a blast.
Who did that, Sean?
I did.
Oh, that's Taika Waititi.
Right. Cool.
It's the ladies who did Thor Ragnarok and What We Do in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilder People.
Derek?
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see Parasite. I know you guys have all seen it already, but
Did all of us see it already? Really?
Yeah,
Yep.
I just saw it
yeah,
yesterday.
Oh, you saw it today? Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I saw it Saturday.
Oh, wow.
I think it sounds like this is kind of
Well, we'll talk about Parasite next month. I'm really excited about it.
yeah,
But
and Knives Out, Ryan Johnson's new movie.
oh, yeah,
So
hell yeah,
excited.
Knives
sure.
It's going to be a
For sure.
blast.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I do. Since we're here, I want to give a mention. I also saw another movie yesterday, To the King. If it's on Netflix right now, it's a Netflix original. It's Timothy Chalamet and Robert
Oh, yeah.
Pattinson and Joel Edgerton. It's not necessarily the best, but I found it really interesting. It's about Henry V and kind of the English invasion of France and leading up to the Battle of Agincourt, and really interesting medieval historical kind of fiction. It's more based on Shakespeare's plays, his like Henry V plays or whatever, but without like having the Shakespeare language. But yeah, I saw that yesterday and it really kind of stood out. It's a really interesting movie.
Cool.
Nice.
Sean was able to sneak a review in our preview section. So that was cool. Good job, Sean.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
And cool. I'm really excited for The Irishman. Martin Scorsese's new movie with De Niro and
yeah.
Al Pacino and Joe Pesci. It's going to be on Netflix at the end of the month, like Thanksgiving
Another
weekend. I
Netflix
think.
original.
Totally, it's a Netflix
God
movie.
Damn, I'm
But,
excited.
I just bought tickets today for it's playing at the Cinerama, so I'm going to go see it on Saturday.
Nice.
So
Are you ready to sit in the theater for almost 4 hours?
Glorious.
yeah,
This sounds so intimidating.
Oh, yeah.
hell yeah. Easier than at
Man,
home,
this
sitting
is-
still for 4 hours.
Not as easy for me. This isn't be Netflix's. You think they're like one of these movies? God damn it! One of these movies got to make it to the Best Picture scenario.
This
Just
this
buy
could
up
be
all
it.
the movies.
This could be it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the best
Wait.
picture list right here.
Wait, Roma
What do
didn't
you
win
think?
Best Picture last year? Oh yeah, the
No.
Green Book did.
No.
That's so sad.
Ugh.
Yeah, I forgot that Roma was Netflix. Holy crap!
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up. So yeah, thanks for listening, everybody, and have a great month. November is going to be a really epic month for movies. So hope you see something great.
Epic.
Have a great night.
Bye.
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 Bye.